let's move ahead with the action items. First item on the agenda
I'll
is
move.
the minutes.
I'll move that the May 15 minutes be approved.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next up is Diane Randall. We have a settlement approval to discuss. Go ahead, Diane.
Good morning, Diane Randall, Director of Risk Management. I'm here this morning for an action item for recommendation of board approval for a settlement authority of $30,000 to settle with plaintiff Mamie Thompson. You have a full defense evaluation in your packet, but on January 30th, 2016, a PSTA bus was pulling away from a bus stop when a passenger who was standing fell on the plaintiff who was sitting. As a result of the injury, Ms. Thompson injured her left elbow and has been diagnosed with chronic pain syndrome as a result, and her medicals run in the range of just over $23,000. We are recommending going forward with a contingent settlement agreement that we have of $30,000 to reserve the claim without further litigation.
Okay, any questions? Is in these kinds of cases, is the person usually represented, or do they deal directly with us?
In this particular case, they actually filed suit, so there is a lawsuit going on, so they are represented.
Okay.
So sometimes they'll start a claim by working directly with us and they don't like our evaluation and they'll go get an attorney. 9 out of 10 times they go directly to an attorney.
Okay, all right. All right, if there are no questions, do I hear a motion?
I'll move that the settlement be approved of $30,000.
You'll second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, Henry, we're going to talk about a waste removal contract.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Henry Lukasik, Director of Maintenance, Fleet and Facilities. So the action item before you is to approve a 2-year contract with 3-year, 1-year options with AquaClean for a total not to exceed $153,000. Like most large fleet and facilities, we generate waste oil, waste filters, other consumables that need to be hauled off and disposed of under the requirements of the Environmental Protection Act. Purchasing Department did their due diligence by putting out a solicitation. 5 bids were received. The lowest contractor to perform the services was AquaClean. They're also the incumbent. We've had no performance issues in their previous services to us. Before you is the approximate totals for each year of the contract, and this is funded through our normal operating budget in the maintenance department.
Okay, any questions, anyone?
Could I have the name of the company repeated, please?
AquaClean? AquaClean.
It's in,
Thank you.
it's in your notes here.
Yeah.
Okay, specifically, what is does this alleviate any possible issues with regard to PSTA, with regard to any environmental issues? They take all responsibility for this, so we're not involved in any way with potential litigation? Okay. All right, do I hear a motion? Move approval?
I would move to approve the waste removal contract.
You're going to second.
Oh.
You gotta jump on that fast.
Somebody listen. I was in.
Okay. All right.
Second. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No one? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Okay. Okay, next would be the preliminary engineering and final design services contract. Abhishek?
Skip the one.
Oh, did I skip uniform? Sorry about that, guys. Wait a minute. Okay, Jeff Thompson, here we go. Okay, Jeff.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We ask that you, I'll defer to Al, he's going to give you the proposal.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Al Burns, Director of Procurement. This morning, we bring before you recommendation approval of a 2-year contract with 3 one-year options with North America Fire Equipment Company in an amount not to exceed $500,000, and recommend authorizing the CEO to exercise the 3 one-year options. As you know, we have all of our operators and our staff. Majority of our staff, they wear uniforms. This has been negotiated on the annual uniform allowance. The bus operators, they get $200 annually. Customer service reps, $180 annually, and the supervisors, $240 annually for the uniform allowance. In April of this year, we released an RFP. It was in compliance with PSTA's procurement policies. It was posted on DemandStar, our website. We received two proposals from that. Warrior Supply Depot, they scored a total of 703 points. North America Fire Equipment Company, they scored a total of 824 points. The fiscal impact of this is being funded by operating funds. And once again, the recommendation is the approval of a 2-year contract with 3 one-year options with North America Fire Equipment Company in an amount not to exceed $500,000 in total for the duration of the contracts, and recommend authorizing the CEO to exercise these 3 one-year optional years. If there's any questions, Jeff and I would be more than happy to answer.
Any questions? These folks were done through our regular scoring system. What are the key components of the scoring system?
The components of the scoring system were the qualifications of the firm, their work plan or their transition plan if we were to, if the incumbent was not going to be awarded the contract, and 300 points was for the price. So it was 700 points technical, 300 points price.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I know, and we've worked with these folks before. We feel comfortable with them.
Yes, sir. And note that I forgot to mention, the evaluation committee consisted of SEIU members and staff. So it was a collaborative effort, and the union employees had input on the selection process.
Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you. Yes. Go ahead, Commissioner.
So the uniform allowance is what we give to each of those different classes of employees to then purchase their uniforms under this contract. Is that how that works?
Yes.
And it says the total is $86,700 per year. Up at the top.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of picky, but so we have a $500,000 5-year contract. Is that just a cushion for hiring more people, or for changes in price over time? Is it allocated equally per year? What's the?
Your first statement was accurate. Just put some, I don't want to contingency in there, for lack of better terms, just in case there's an influx in operators or supervisors or something, and we wouldn't have to come back to the board and ask the board for approval. Just kind of round it up.
And how do we have that in the budget currently? Is it $100,000 per year? Is it 86.7?
I'll defer to Michael or Debbie.
I'd have to look into the detail, but it's actually based on the exact number of people that we have budgeted for next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, yes. Sure.
In the price comparisons between the two, how were they? Were they close?
They were relatively close. Actually, I think Warrior Supply came in cheaper. However, they did not, the technical aspect of it outweighed their price tremendously. And one of the key components of the solicitation, and one of the things that the operations group was pretty adamant about, the online ordering feature. And Warrior Supply, I'm looking at Jane for concurrence, but I don't believe Warrior Supply had that in place at the time. It was something that was still going to be under development.
That's correct.
So the $86,000 that we're paying, I guess North American, what would it have been with Warrior?
I'd have to give me one 1 second, sir, I can answer that.
Just a clarification, PSTA budgets what our union contract requires us, the $200 per bus driver, and then the bus drivers are allowed to spend up to $200 of, per year. So our number that's in the budget would not change depending on the vendor. It would just be the, what, they could get theoretically cheaper, more clothes for the same $200?
Yes, sir. I mean, there's a whole à la carte menu of different options that the operators can buy. You see the drivers that operate, some have the Hawaiian or the tropical shirts. That's one. There's
That's correct. Yeah, there's several options for them to purchase,
Ties,
different
yeah.
shirts and ties and pants.
That's correct, but the number wouldn't
The
change,
number
no
doesn't
matter
change.
what. It is based on the uniform allowance.
yes.
And additionally, with hiring anywhere between 60 and 100 additional folks who need more uniforms to get started, so that number is fixed. So now it's a matter of quality, how great the pants and the shorts and the shirts feel, and how well they hold up in the wash and all those type of things. But the number's really not gonna change.
Well, our cost is fixed either way, but what we pay them isn't fixed, is it? What we're paying the company? Or?
The rates for the different line items in the schedule are fixed for the next 5 years.
Understand. So either company we went with, the cost would have been the same. So there was no bump there, when you're talking about criteria, price being one of the criteria,
Yes, sir.
they were the same.
I like to make sure that I answer this correctly. One company, the pricing weren't the same for each company. One company might price a shirt at $10, another company might price a shirt at $15. So the pricing for the uniforms weren't the same. Warrior pricing was less
So the
than that.
the deals are with the union.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so, yes.
So it doesn't really matter. We just have that budget period end.
Roger that, yes, sir.
Okay. And we felt this was the best company on all of this.
Yes, sir.
The per unit price.
And technology.
All the other things. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Um,
One more question.
At least.
Yeah.
And so we pay, PSTA pays up to that dollar amount, $200 or whatnot, dollar for dollar, until, and then if they go over, then it's the employee paying it. It's not a percentage shared cost.
The employee picks it up.
And just on more durable uniform items, what do we do with employees that are no longer here? That, I mean, do they have the ability to bring those items
Yeah,
back?
we try to recollect those things from them that are wearable or unused or in good shape,
Like-
put them out for other people to pick from.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
I move that the contract be approved for uniforms.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carries unanimously. Thank you.
G, C, and D
Okay.
all on consent, you think, B, C?
Yeah, I think that's a consent item, yes.
All three of those?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty straightforward. Okay, now, BRT preliminary engineering and final design services contract as amended. Abhishek?
Well, good morning, Finance Committee.
Good morning.
My name is Abhishek Dayal, Director of Project Management Office, and I'm here to talk about the Central Avenue BRT project for the contract with H.W. Lochner to complete the final design services for this project. And we've been working on this project and the final design for almost a year now. And I wanted to give a big shout out to my team, the project management team that's sitting in the audience, and then also the H.W. Lochner team represented by project manager Tom Stoner for working on this project for almost a year. So we're at a milestone where we've completed 30% design, and we're now moving towards completing the final design for this project. So today's item for action is for the Finance Committee to approve the contract amendment to H.W. Lochner for an amount not to exceed $1.85 million to complete the final design for this project. So just as an overview, the Central Avenue BRT project connects downtown St. Petersburg through South Pasadena and into the beaches. Now, we've been working with a lot of stakeholders, and you've been hearing about some of those stakeholder interactions more recently. So we've made quite a few changes to the project more recently. The most notable change is the terminus of the project that we're now looking at is at the County Beach Park, which is about 15 blocks north of where we used to be by the Don Cesar Hotel. But that still connects all the key destinations that the project originally intended to connect, i.e. the USF St. Pete, downtown St. Petersburg, all the neighborhoods along First Avenue North and South, as well as the beach area with all the hotels and resorts, terminating at the County Beach Park. So the project mileage now, as it stands, is about 10.3 miles with the reduction in the service to Don Cesar, and about 16 station pairs is what we're looking at. But on a regional context, this is a very critical project, and we believe that this will provide that important link to the rest of the Tampa Bay region. As many of you are aware, that T-BARTA is undertaking a PD&E effort on the 41-mile BRT project, linking downtown St. Pete to downtown Tampa, and as well as north towards the USF campus. So this, again, provides that important link, and we believe can be a catalyst for other important connections in the Tampa Bay region. So we've updated the project cost based on the design that we've done to date. So the project cost as it stands is $43.93 million, with the project funding sources being FTA, FDOT, City of St. Pete, and PSTA's own capital reserves. Where we are on the project is we've completed 30% design, and we're working towards 60% design. Our goal is to have the 60% design completed by late summer of this year. As I mentioned, capital cost has been refined based on the work we've done to date, and we're continuing to coordinate with all our project partners, and more recently with the Pinellas County on the beach park access where the project will terminate. On a good news front, and a very important milestone for this project, City of St. Petersburg recently approved 2 funding agreements with PSTA, one of which will be for action by the Planning Committee later this morning. So the 2 funding agreements that the City of St. Petersburg has approved includes $4 million in local funds for design and construction of the BRT project, and then an additional $750,000 towards public art at select BRT stations within the City of St. Petersburg. So we're very excited about this, and then we're also working with FDOT on their local share of $9.5 million. It's already programmed in their fiscal year 20 work program, and so we will be working with them on the JPA to further solidify their commitments later next month. On the FTA, the federal front, as you know, we received a medium-high rating, which is again the second highest rating the project can get back in March. So we're well positioned for a grant agreement. And then another important milestone that we achieved was FTA began formal oversight of this project. And what that means is FTA has hired a project management oversight contractor to begin formal oversight. And that was done back in May. And so we're working with them on our technical documents, our cost, scope, and schedule, which is what FTA would look towards to finalize a grant agreement. And so all those key milestones, including the favorable rating, puts us well on track for getting a grant agreement by the end of this year. So per our schedule, we are in design still, and we're rapidly working towards completing the design by later this fall. And assuming we get the grant agreement by the end of this year, we can start construction by the end of this year, and Hope to have this contract open by the end of 2020, early part of 2021. Sorry. So a little bit about the Lochner contract on the final design services. Now, back in August, this committee had approved the contract with H.W. Lochner for a not to exceed amount of $1.7 million. The contract was divided into 3 phases, if you recall. The first phase was for the design team to come in, look at where the project's at in the planning phase, do a little more investigation, refine the project definition, refine the project cost, and then move towards a final design phase, which is what we are in currently. So the final design phase will essentially complete that final design, also undertake all the necessary steps that FTA requires to work towards a grant agreement. And then the third phase will happen once we start construction, which will be mostly support activities during construction. So what the consultants will do in this second phase would be to take the design from 30% through the end of design, 100% design. They'll also work with the artist. As I mentioned, the city of St. Pete provided $750,000 for public art. So they'll be working with the artist team on the station designs. They'll also further refine the transit signal priority and other ITS improvements that we're planning for on the route corridor. And then further investigation on utilities. We're reaching out to all the utility companies to make sure we identify any utility conflicts early on in the design phase. So that's something that they will do as part of this phase as well. And then further look to refine project costs as we get more details on the various project elements. The last 2 items are more FTA requirements. So FTA does require a risk assessment where the project management oversight contractor comes in and they assess the project risks, and so our design team will be participating in that risk workshop. And then also developing some final documents for the grant agreement, which again, our target is towards the end of this year. So things are moving along really well, and so our recommendation to this finance committee is to amend the contract with H.W. Lochner for not to exceed amount of $1.85 million for them to complete those remaining activities for the design. Just as a note, this funding does come from FDOT and PSTA, and it's all included within the project cost that I had talked about in the previous slide. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, I'm great moving forward with the next step. Just since it's been a while since I looked in on the project, I'm assuming that the capital cost includes all the buses.
Yes.
And that would be how many?
9.
9 buses. That is including, we're getting smaller buses instead of the larger buses?
We have budgeted for 9 40-foot buses.
Has that been since the beginning, or have we had the larger buses?
Well, originally in the project cost, we had the 60-foot buses.
So is that project cost coming down, or we're just gonna keep it as is and use the difference in contingency, or?
So we had a few things that we had to change. So we did reduce the project budget for vehicles to account for the smaller buses. But other project elements based on design did go up because
There's
of
always
labor and
something, right?
materials.
There's always something to get you. Talk to me a little bit about estimated operating revenue and cost. Once we get this thing built, what do we got? What do we have figured in our budget? Are we looking at kind of a break even in the first couple of years? Are we looking at significant losses? And I'm assuming that's in our.
It's in our 5-year plan.
It's in our 5-year plan. How's that looking as far as that element of our 5-year plan?
The costs that are in there, and when you take a look at the revenues, not assuming that we get anything from FDOT for operations, because oftentimes they give you grant funding for at least a few years. Assuming that, this still remains one of our highest Southside cost recovery areas of about 33%. And that 30 to 33%, which means for we're getting back a significant amount of money. So everything in public transit loses money.
Right.
But we're going to be losing less with this route because it's so productive.
And so again, I think, it all gets back to those funding discussions that we're having. Obviously,
Exactly.
the short-term one that we're gonna have next month doesn't really address what, that 5-year plan. We're talking about trying to come up with an additional, more permanent structure. But you still feel, even without that this way, using this product, if you will, is really gonna lower the cost relative to what we would have been doing.
Because you're going to be increasing the amount of riders compared
Right.
to the cost that we have. And you're also setting, and not to take Abhishek's thing, but to me, you're sort of setting a precedent for what PSTA can do for the community. And something very, I'll say, innovative and different that's out there to get those choice riders to PSTA.
Thank you.
So the original 1.7 million that was approved, that was for phase one only?
That was intended for the entire contract value.
Okay, so it
but
was phase one, phase two, and phase three?
Phase 3, yes.
And it made it part of the way through phase two?
It made part of the way to phase 2. As I mentioned, several things changed as we investigated the project design and the scope, and we had to make quite a few changes, and that did increase the scope a little bit.
Okay, well, I mean, so it more than doubled the scope of the design part of it, right? It went from 1.7 to 3.55. So can you go into a little bit more detail about what some of those changes were that doubled the scope of the original design phase?
Sure. So we did some additional utility investigation. We did some more surveys on our entire route. We moved quite a few stations actually to where they were more feasible, because there were a lot of utility conflicts that we found. There was a lot of roadway redesign that we would have had to do. So in certain cases, we had to move stations. We actually had to move at least 9 stations of the 17 that we had, based on these different investigations that we did. I also mentioned the fact that we received a funding agreement from the city of St. Petersburg on the art element. So some of the increase would also be because of the public art that we're adding that was not originally in the scope. So that's something we added. And then the third thing I would say is all the changes we've made recently in discussions with the stakeholders, whether it's St. Pete Beach or St. Petersburg and USF. We work collaboratively with those entities and making a few adjustments to the project scope. So that added more design cost to the contract.
So, but you're saying that even with that increased cost, that the entire project's still within the same original
Yes.
budget number?
So we had, the amount that we are at 3.55 is still within the professional services portion of the project cost. We had slightly underestimated, actually quite a bit underestimated the value that would cost for all 3 phases, but which is really the reason why we broke it down into 3 phases, so that the first phase we can truly understand where the risks are and what additional work we might have to do going forward. So that's what resulted in that increase.
Okay, and Commissioner Eggers brought up the point, so we've gone to 40-foot buses. Given the involvement of various stakeholders, the question is why? Why are we not going back to the 60-foot that we originally wanted, that the city of St. Petersburg originally wanted? Those are our stakeholders. The state of Florida, PSTA, and the city. So I don't understand why we've kept the 40-foot buses as opposed to going back to what we originally planned and had a higher ridership, had better overall operating metrics.
And that's a fair question, Commissioner. Just so we're clear, the stations that are being designed currently do accommodate a 60-foot bus. So we're not reducing or shrinking the station platforms to be limited to 40-foot buses. So we are designing all our stations, the entire route, to accommodate a 60-foot bus. So in the future, if we do see the need for a 60-foot bus, we would be able to deploy them. The 40-foot bus, yes, there was a lot of discussions with, community, and there was concern about using bigger buses, and so we did adjust the buses down to 40 feet. But that's something that we can always look and see if we want to change that. Again, the capital, the design phase is still looking at a 60-foot platforms to accommodate those buses. So it's more of an operational, down the road kind of a situation where we can make changes as we see fit.
Okay, and the buses as they're, the 40-footers, are they being outfitted the same as our normal buses?
Well, they'll be a little different because as we had communicated to the community that we will have all-door boarding. We would allow for bikes inside the buses. So our plan is still to accommodate all that within the 40-foot bus.
Okay, so these buses are not necessarily interchangeable with our current fleet, right? So if we decided to go up to a 60-foot bus because the ridership's there and we buy new buses, there's going to be some retrofitting or additional work to then take these 40-footers and move them into service on a different line.
That's true, and we are going to work with our maintenance team to make sure that so we have that flexibility in case we need to deploy 60-foot buses, or for that matter, if there are special events and we might need additional buses, then we can pull some fleet from our existing pool of fleet and deploy them on our BRT routes. So yes.
So I don't disagree with the notion that you could start with a 40-foot bus and see what the ridership looks like, except that our own projections showed that the ridership would warrant a 60-foot bus. So if we're going to go with a 40-foot, I would really like to know what the cost of returning those 40-foot buses back to normal fleet service would be as part of the cost projections of then getting a 60-foot bus to replace it, a year or two from now.
Well, maybe just to clarify or add to what Abhishek has said, because I think he's done a good job of explaining it. In light of last week's activities in the city of St. Pete Beach and at the city of St. Petersburg, which, as you said, maybe has a preference for the larger bus, we have not ever done any analysis on the peak load. None of the forecasting models that FTA requires that we've done dozens of times for this project have ever given a number, have ever told us what size bus to purchase. We had assumed, because almost every BRT system across the world has the larger buses, we had assumed from the beginning the 60-foot bus, because in addition, our stakeholders had asked to put the bikes inside the bus. So in order to get about the same number of seats as a regular bus, we needed a longer vehicle. When the concerns were raised about the size of the vehicles on the beach, we did scale back down to a smaller vehicle, but still have those same features as Abhishek said, that put the bikes inside, have some other features. I've now asked our staff, we're going to run the model again, and we think we've developed a way, a mathematical way to estimate the peak load and just see what it is. We have not done an analysis of that sort yet, but my plan is to have that presented to the PSTA board. Okay. And the PSTA board, all 15 experts of you decide on the size of the vehicle based on real data. We haven't had data on this decision. We've had a lot of opinions about from folks out in the community, but at least we'll have the data. We'll have an estimate of what the peak loads are forecast to be and what bus we should buy, and then decide then. Okay. So right now, the game plan, as you said, the full design is being designed to accommodate the bigger buses, and then we'll see what the data shows.
So just to follow up on that, and then I want to give other commissioners an opportunity. So if we do a peak load assessment, we find out that a 40-foot bus is the appropriate vehicle.
Yeah.
Are we then talking about going back to the redesign phase and potentially shortening the platforms and capacity to a 40-foot, or are we going to keep it at 60? So I mean, this goes into the design question as to, are we designing, and of course, we're building things that hopefully have staying power, right?
Right.
So it's not just the loads today, but, the community as it grows and changes over time. But any thoughts on how that might impact?
I probably wouldn't recommend that. My friends over at Lochner would charge us more to our redesign, and I don't want to spend
So
more
the
than
cost
this.
savings of less of a platform wouldn't equal the redesign cost?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't think.
Thank you.
Anybody
I
else?
agree. We're designing for
Go
the
ahead,
future, so
Commissioner Cox.
we want to keep that
Oh.
60 foot.
I'm sorry, say it again, please, Abhishek, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna echo what Brad just said. I think we're designing for the future, so we will likely keep the 60-foot platforms.
Okay. Commissioner Cox?
Yeah, hi. Abhishek, I had more action in Mr. Miller too. I was at the council meeting that, when they approved, the $4 million, and they were enthusiastic. St. Pete administration and council were enthusiastic. I guess my question would be, with the, administration at St. Pete had mentioned about, well, we may just as well go all the way to Don Cesar. That was reported by the media. And there was some acrimony between St. Petersburg City, St. Pete, and St. Pete Beach. But we work closely, I assume, with St. Petersburg to make sure that they're on board with the turnaround at the county park there. Am I correct? They are on board with that?
Well, they want to make sure that as do we, that the project is successful and
Right.
it's meeting the purpose and need of this project. And yes, we believe that the project will still be successful if it just goes to the
Okay.
county beach park.
Okay, one other question on that, and that's about 11 blocks shorter than it was initially. Does that result in any cost savings?
There will be some cost changes, but at the same time, we are looking to build a platform, hopefully within the county beach park premises.
Mhm.
So that's the analysis that our Lochner team is doing right now. So that'll be reflected in the cost estimates
Okay, good.
to see if there's any savings or it's a wash.
I understand. That's all I
Okay.
have.
All right, Commissioner Bennett?
Kind of along that same line, we're gonna continue to pursue the travel further south on Gulf Boulevard.
So I guess right now, our thought was that the project will terminate at the county beach park. But, certainly, down the road in the future, if there's an opportunity and interest to further go south, definitely we want to make sure that. we
Well,
have
as
the
Finn
ability.
said, that next 11 blocks is important. There's a lot of our customers who wanna go that next 11 blocks. So I think we should continue to pursue some opportunity to get to the Don Cesar and manufacture a turnaround point. Are we gonna continue to look at that?
As part of this phase, we'll probably just stay at the county beach park just to meet the requirements and the schedule for the project. But definitely want to keep the design flexible so that in the future, if there's a desire, we may consider going further south.
And I don't know whether I've missed it at some other time, but I kind of would like for you to tell me how we're gonna load 4 or 5 bicycles inside the bus. How's that gonna be feasible?
We can do that.
Sometime we need to talk about it.
Yeah, they do it in Europe.
And why?
Yeah.
Well, one option, and speaking, our health insurance guy is here, you're gonna have to be really strong in the upper body to hoist your bike up there.
Yeah.
That's one option we're looking at.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Akers, follow up.
Yeah, just a couple things that Commissioner Schulman brought up that I hadn't really focused on too much. So the 1.85 million clearly doubles the price that we had anticipated, and you're saying most or all of it is change of scope?
A lot of that was change in scope, but a lot of that was also what we identified during that first phase. There was additional design that needed to happen that we didn't do during the planning phase. So the first phase, the phase one that was preliminary engineering, was exploring where the stations are and what are some of the unique engineering challenges that we would have to design for during final design.
So
that's what
so somewhere along the way, we just guess, underestimated significantly our design cost.
I think you would say that when the board approved the 1.7, we knew that was optimistic.
I don't remember those words, but you said that this is optimistic, but that's, I mean, again, I'm just trying to make sure I get where the mistakes, I call them mistakes made, because obviously this is a huge, that's not a little miss, so that was, for some reason, in my mind, even though I'm reading it right now closely, and it says, doing that, I kind of thought we were going up to 1.85 million. We're not, we're doubling the cost, so that does cause a lot of concern for me. And the other thing, just, of course, the question I have to ask is, two things. What kind of buses are we doing? And the question that Josh asked about repurposing these buses, if we find out later that we need to go to the 60-foot, are these transferable to the rest of our fleet? So that we don't have to waste money. We can repurpose these buses to our regular.
So your initial comment about what we found out, that was during the preliminary engineering phase. At the time that we awarded this contract to Lochner, we had a certain design that was done during planning phase, which did not entail, which is typical during a planning phase, of not doing a whole lot of utility surveys, boundary surveys, and really understanding what the right-of-way impacts would be and what kind of roadway redesign we would have to do. So that's why we had this first phase, to really understand what the constraints, physical constraints might be, and then provide that feedback on what would it take for final design. So that's one thing.
So you feel like this is the one area that we had the most, I guess, the greatest possibility of uncertainty?
Yes.
We're not going to see that kind of half
Change.
estimates coming into play a lot.
Right, going forward, we won't. The other thing I was gonna mention, and I forgot to mention to this group, we also did an independent estimate of that same scope. If that was to be done by another contractor, would that be about the same amount of hours and same level of effort, and it's pretty close to what they came up with. So we have that as well, so that check as well, to make sure that the scope of work that we are looking at is truly
It's reasonable.
So with regards to the vehicles, we are still looking at a 40-foot bus, a hybrid electric bus, with those amenities to allow for bikes inside the buses. And I'm going to need Henry's help, if possible, on repurposing the buses for our regular fleet. Henry, did you want to say something about that?
Transit bus is a pretty flexible piece of equipment, so they can be repurposed. Equipment can be transferred over to other buses, reused. The 40-foot buses, even if it was not for the BRT, certainly can carry people, can be reconfigured many times over to reuse those in normal
It's been a reasonable cost, so we're not going to waste that money. In other words, it can be repurposed. The worst thing you want to do is to say these buses can't be used. And 3 years down the road, we say, oh my gosh, we should have gone with the 60-foots.
Right, the 40-footers or even 60-footers, they are not so highly specialized where they cannot be used for transit purposes. So they'll still have seats. We may have to just reposition them. Technologies that go on the 40-footers can be transferred to the 60-footers. We don't have to purchase those again. So it's relatively.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I had one final question, I think, regarding the art. So the city of St. Petersburg is going to be putting funds into art at the stations. What are we doing on the stations outside of the city limits? Is that part of the current plan?
The art, it'll be part of the current plan, but it wouldn't include the art element, since the city funding are to be used within the city boundaries. So we'll continue with our station designs, our standard station designs.
So we're gonna go from the city's art stations to plain.
Well, but with the option that in the future, if there's an opportunity or interest by those communities, that would have the ability to install art in the future. So we would keep that flexibility. The design will have that flexibility to allow for incorporation of art.
But there's nothing currently included.
There's nothing.
I would just ask to suggest recharacterizing, for $3.55 million of design, they will not be plain. They will be beautiful.
Well, and I'm not, and I meant to say, without an art touch.
Stops throughout.
You know, in my mind, I'm just picturing,
Yeah, yeah, the feet.
I'm picturing from a user standpoint and from a tourist standpoint that there's a continuity in how they look and feel among all the stations, and that there's, the sense that the BRT's tying Southern Pinellas together as one community, at least in the eyes of people that visit here, even though we know we're going through several different communities along the way.
Right.
And I was interested to see how that feel to the rider is going to be. If, you know, I'm not meaning to say it'll look like drab all of a sudden that you're going into like some sort of.
You'll have the beautiful beaches out there too.
So the one on the beach will just be glass, so you can just see the.
See the beach.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just one more question about the bikes. And Henry, I think we'll still have the bike rack on the front of these 40-foot buses, is that correct?
No.
That one won't be on there?
It'll be inside. You'll take your bike inside.
Will they hang, or are there, like in Boston, you can hang a bike, you know?
That's what we're discussing. They make, as many vehicles have it where you hang
Mhm.
front wheel
Right.
from the top,
Right.
vertical.
Right.
And then they make ones that have like little like slots in the
Okay.
floor.
Okay.
And we're looking at both those options.
And how many bikes? We're looking at 5?
Four.
Yeah, we're looking at 4, and as Commissioner Bennett requested, we will bring those designs to this group
Okay.
for you to look at as well.
I like bikes on buses.
Okay, I just have a couple of quick questions. The first question, we talked about the different kinds of vehicle sizes, but the original plan with the 60-foot buses where they were sort of an avant-garde design, not a traditional rolling box. And so if we go to the 40-footers, are they also going to be more of a streamlined, futuristic kind of a design? Because then the question with regard to repurposing them to use on the regular routes that PSTA runs is that we're going to have some buses that look pretty standard and some buses that look futuristic if we have that approach. What is the design or appearance of the buses that we're going to be on this route?
I think the intent still is to have that premium bus look, to denote that this is a special, a premium service. So our 40-foot buses that we buy will also have that premium look. And as Henry mentioned, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a bus that can be deployed for other fixed routes. In the future, if we do decide to use them for our regular local fixed services. So we don't see that as an issue, but for that BRT service, as you rightly mentioned, we are envisioning a more of a premium type bus look, and that's still our intent for our 40-foot buses.
Okay. Can you define art as we're going to have in the stations? Are we going to borrow artworks from museums and put them in there? Are we going to commission artists to do particular station art? What is our plan with regard to art?
So City of St. Petersburg did have an artist team identified for this work, and that's the Mickett Stackhouse. And they've done artwork in other parts of the country, in fact, in some parts of the world as well. And so they are going to be working with our architects from the Lochner team to come up with a station design that incorporates art. So it'll be integrated art as opposed to a standalone art piece at the station. So as we're looking at maybe a shelter design, we're working with them on how best to integrate maybe like a panel or certain elements as part of the shelter, so it's part of the station infrastructure as opposed to just a standalone art piece. So that's what we're working on. In fact, we just had a meeting yesterday with the city and the artists and the architects team to really try to hone in on what those elements would be and how it best fits in the station design.
So, would the art be permanent to that shelter, or would it be removable and sort of rotating pieces around the different shelters or in and out of museums, that kind of thing?
We intend this to be a more of a permanent feature, something that's certainly durable and can be maintained by our group. So we actually had maintenance team also in those meetings, so that anything that we do design with the art piece, that's something that's more durable and that the community can enjoy. So that's our intent for this effort.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, do I hear a motion?
I'll move that we authorize 1.85 million funded for the new project.
I second.
Okay, all right, thank you, Dan. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Abhishek.
Thanks for your hard work.
Thanks
Good
for
job.
all of you that
Good job.
participated in this, we appreciate it. Okay. Employee insurance benefits, Debbie?
Here, you get ready. That's that positively. I don't know your work. People are going to say about it, but
Well, good morning, Debbie Leas, Chief Financial Officer here at PSTA, and welcome Commissioner Saraki. As you can probably tell, and Commissioner Schulman and I had this discussion last night, the Finance Committee rocks. This is where it's at. Where else can you go to talk about waste in uniforms and BRT, claim settlements, everything all in one place? So today we're going to be talking about our action items for our health insurance renewals. Matter of fact, we are bringing it to you in the month of June. We normally do this in the month of July. And there's some good reasons for that. But as a little bit of a reminder, last year we brought to the board, based on a competitive solicitation, the health insurance company of Cigna as our provider. When we did so, we had option years for renewals because, Commissioner Bennett, you had said, we really need to look at this every single year to keep these companies on their toes because they are there to make a profit. So that's what we've done, and we'll be looking at it today. Back in 2017, we had one plan for the employees to choose from. After that, we decided to give the employees multiple options. So we kept that plan. It's sort of our premium plan or buy-up plan, and we introduced a new base plan and a high deductible plan. All the benefits are the same for all the different plans. It's just the cost to the employee that really differs. And with the high deductible plan, we made it free for single employees, and for everybody in high deductible plan, we have HSA accounts set up, and PSTA contributes to that. At this time of year when we start looking at renewals, what we do is we take a look at how we're doing compared to where we were. I like to call this slide the Cigna page because it's all about Cigna. Cigna's in the business of making money, so they like to look at our loss ratio. And the loss ratio is basically taking a look at what our claims are compared to the money that we give them. So we've done very well. We've seen a little bit of an uptick from last year to this year in our loss ratio, but we've also had a significant number of high dollar volume claims that are in there. Despite that, we are still probably at about the lowest level we have been since 2014. So we continue to make improvements in our health and wellness here at PSTA. And this plays into the renewal, but this year something special has come about. I never thought as a government finance official I would be coming to you and telling you what's happening on Wall Street. But Cigna purchased a company called Express Scripts. They're basically a middleman, a benefits manager, is a middleman between the drug suppliers and the employers. And they bought this company for something well above all of our pay grades at $67 billion. And when they did that, they also inherited another $15 million worth of debt. So that for Cigna meant they now had about $41 million worth of debt for themselves. And it provided a very not as good debt capitalization ratio. So Wall Street said, my eyes are on you, Cigna, and we want you to bring that down somewhere in the 30% range rather than a 40% debt to capitalization ratio. So Cigna said, well, we can do that, and there's one of the ways we can do that is through ensuring we get renewals of the customers we have. So they're willing to play ball this year. So I've got Sean Fleming from the Gehring Group. The Gehring Group is our broker on the health insurances. And I gave Sean the task of going out, and I said, I want you to come back and say to them, I don't want any increase at all. Now, I know that's probably not probable, but you never know. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So Sean went and said, PSTA doesn't want to have any increases in their health care costs. They came back, they negotiated. Sean gave up not only his firstborn, but his secondborn child. And they came back with a 4.4% increase, which is way better than what we've seen in the past number of years. And we share that increase 50-50 with the union. So this is going to allow us to do a few different things. We're going to be looking at increasing the PSTA contributions to the HSA accounts by a minimum of about $100. We're going to be looking to keep no increases in the high deductible plan while providing increases, passing that increase on to the new base plan and the premium plan. So let's take a look to see how that looks. So on this chart, we have last year, this year. We have the three different plans. The BIA plan is our premium plan, the new base plan, and then the high deductible plan. As you can see on that third or second column from the right, there are no changes at all in high deductible, and this is just proposed at this point. The BIA plan, the alternate plan are going up slightly. So most of our employees are in the new base plan. We've seen a huge increase in the people, let me just go back a slide or two, a big increase in the people in the high deductible plan. Where we were at 77, we're at 119 now. So we're seeing a good increase in there, but you can see most of our employees are in the new base plan. So in this particular case, we're looking pretty good. It's not a huge increase for any of our employees. We've increased as a proposal, and I've got Sean looking at this to make sure it's not violating anything, increases to our health savings plans. One of the things that we've done this past year as a pilot program is our Fitbits. Julie, I think, is our poster child for our Fitbit program. But we only offered it to the high deductible plan. And what you do is you get $1.50 for every 10,000 steps, or not every, but for getting 10,000 steps a day. You get $1.50 for having 30 minutes of cardio. So some of you in the room have seen me jogging at the microwave in the break room. You see me running around while my tea is brewing. We try all sorts of things. Now, I think it was you, Commissioner Schulman, last year had said, well, what are we going to do for everybody else? So we're going to be looking at providing the Fitbits to our base plan, our new base plan. We won't be able to contribute to the health savings account because it doesn't exist for them. But what we will be able to do as an example is maybe give out gift cards as incentives. So we're trying to get everybody in the organization healthy, and we're working at it a little bit one step at a time. We've also had a lot of discussion in the past, and I know Commissioner Eggers has brought this up. What are we going to do for the stick or the carrot, however you want to look at it, to get people to be healthier? One of the things we're looking at is we're going to offer smoking cessation programs this year in anticipation of the following year coming up a way with either being a stick or a carrot on the premiums. I know, I think, Brad, you mentioned it hasn't been well received necessarily in an organization you were in, but we have a significant number of employees with either hypertension or pre-hypertension. Of course, smoking reduces your your blood vessels, it constricts your blood vessels. So this may be one way of getting our employees healthier and saving them a significant amount of money. Another concern we've had, as I mentioned, we've seen an increase in the number of people in the high deductible plan, is are they going to the doctor? Are they getting the health care that they need? I've had Sean do some research, and there's nothing really out there that we can tell from a statistical standpoint that says people are not getting care. So we are going to do our own survey and see what we're doing, and Sean's going to help us develop that survey and kind of come up with some more drill down questions based on what they answer. And it's going to be through like a survey monkey. So we're going to find out what's really happening with our people. I know anecdotally that everyone I know in the high deductible plan is seeking medical attention when they need it and going for their annual physicals. But we want to have something behind it, not just Debbie standing up here and saying it. What's key to all of this as we start going forward is the education. Because there's been so much discussion about the high deductible plan amongst the employees, there's also a lot of questions. So we're going to continue our education process, setting up meetings with the employees to talk about all three plans and what it means to them as an individual. And we in the benefits department are always available to sit down on a one-to-one basis as well. SEIU has been a good partner in all of this because most of our employees are in the SEIU union, and they are working with us and very much a proponent to working on the wellness pieces. From a fiscal standpoint, this means in our budget we've got about $7.8 million for all the health insurances and PSTA's portion of this. So that goes for our major medical, the vision, the dental, AD&D, life insurance, etc. is in the budget. We also have, as I mentioned, different wellness features and challenges that we'll have in there, increases to the HSA accounts in the Fitbit program that are going forward. So it's a good year for us, and the action item before you today is to do the renewals for this, and the renewals in its total, the renewals in its total will be recommending a renewal to Cigna. That's for the medical, the prescription, the dental, not to exceed $8.9 million, and renewing the vision coverage, not to exceed $55,000, and approval of the optional accidental life accidental death and disability insurance with Minnesota Life, not to exceed $85,000. And the reason I'm bringing to you this month instead of next month is I want to take advantage of locking in this 4.4% increase with Cigna so that they can continue on their way. They're very anxious to do this for their Wall Street, giving the numbers to Wall Street. Who knew
Thank
PSTA
you.
was so important?
Questions? Commissioner Akers.
Yeah, just real quick, on the high deductibles, and unfortunately, I was looking at a text here when you were
I'm
talking
sorry.
about this, so I may have missed it, so I apologize. On the high deductible, I'm being concerned that folks are going to the doctor, and not only when needed, but encouraging them to go annually. So that, like at the county, we have a $500 carrot / stick that says if you go and go to the doctor once a year and you get your blood work, then the $500 doesn't ever come into play. But if you don't, then there's a cost associated with it. So it's just a way of saying, hey, just go check in with the doctor and get some blood work done. Is that what we're doing, or?
Well, right now, I mean, it's free, as you know, it's free on all plans to get all your annuals done. What we were starting to look at was more the smoking cessation, but we can certainly put that, I know you've talked about that before.
No, just thinking about just making sure that our, again, you're right, they're not gonna get charged, hopefully, when they go to those preventative type things, but are they going? I think that's what you're gonna look into. Just wanna make sure that.
Yeah, and what I'd add to that, Commissioner, is some of the carriers have started now to create some. So if we go back 5 years when you had a lot of programs like that, it was a tremendous burden on staff
to track that,
Oh.
see that everybody went. And now the carriers have gotten a little more creative and they've started to build some all-inclusive kind of programs where if you want to incentivize that, they do all the work. They just track it through claims. So going into next year's renewal, they've just released a lot of these programs, but I think that's something that would definitely kind of take a look at. I mean, the biggest thing with those programs is how much time does it take on staff to administer that? But now what's nice is they've created some more kind of all-included solutions on that. So I think that's something for next year we'd definitely be taking a look at.
Because I think it's important, you know, we did our biometrics this year, and there are certain people that I know found out, and we talk about that every year, somebody finds out something about themselves they didn't know, which will then be an impetus to go ahead and go to their doctor and say, hey, let's look at this high blood pressure I had today.
Anybody else, questions?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Schulman?
So along what Commissioner Eggers was saying, I think if possible, and I don't know the back office side of it, but if we could link the increases in HSA contributions to going and getting that annual physical, because I like the idea of incentivizing. I also like the idea of putting more money of our money in the HSA accounts to make it easier to then cover healthcare. So I'm in favor of that. Do you know what turning to the loss ratio? Do we know what it was for 2017?
I might have that with me. I might not, but I might. And I want to say it's
Well, Sean should know.
2017, it
This
was
should
up
be-
in the 80s.
I've got, it was actually 95%.
Okay, thank you.
So right now on the prior 12 months, it's about 90%. So when you blend, what an underwriter looks at more than anything is the most recent 12. So you saw Debbie's 72 and 78, I think it was. On there, that was looking at kind of calendar. When you blend those together, because May, July, and August last year were 136%, 127, and 109. So over that prior 12 months, you're still up there, a little bit higher than we'd like to see. Since we locked things in, you actually had a 93% month. So that actually kind of spiked after we locked things in. So that's a little more, good reason we locked things in a little bit earlier this year.
Okay. Ultimately, the concern there from my standpoint is, again, are people receiving health care and their habits around health care plans that they're choosing and how it affects us, and we'll only be able to see that play out over time. You also mentioned that we're sharing the cost 50-50 with the union.
Yes.
So I'm looking at the numbers and I'm confused. So last year we had a 9.7% increase in premiums, which we bore 100%. But and now you're saying, and so now there's a 4.4% increase in premiums. The employee rates are increasing 4.4%. So is this, they're increasing 4.4% and we're increasing 4.4%, which actually makes it
Correct.
8.8% total premium increase?
No, it's not 8.8% total, it's 4.4. I think when Debbie said, sharing, basically you're sharing the increase. So the increase we're looking at is the same. The employees get a 4.4 and the employer gets a 4.4, but that's cumulative, that's not 4.4 plus 4.4. So if making
You're
up,
walking through that, yeah.
so I don't have the exact split of how much employer pays, but let's say it's 80-20. 80% of that is borne by PSTA and 20%, they're still getting 4.4%.
So each of the pieces are going up 4.4%. It doesn't mean it's a cumulative number. It's-
Let's say it was a 10% increase on $100. If currently PSTA was paying 90 and the employees were paying 10, so the employees would pay the employees would go up $1, which is 10%. PSTA would go up $9. So it's still 10% to each component.
Proportionate
in that.
shares.
Correct.
Okay, so, thank
Does that
you.
help?
Yeah,
Yeah.
proportionate shares help with that.
Okay.
So, everyone's share is going up 4.4%.
Correct, except for what we looked at, and it's negligible in the overall is, the option in front of you is for the high deductible
Right.
to stay at no change, which at the end of the day is a very negligible impact on that.
Okay, and thank you for that. The survey, that's included in, that you want to put forward, that's included in our costs already?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot that's included in our cost with Cigna. We get a wellness budget that also comes with it, that we do the biometrics with. We can pay for challenges. We've paid for equipment out of that in the past. So there's a lot of things that we can do with that as well.
And the final question, potentially, is the second to last slide showed the employer cost for the 2020 is $7.8 million for all health insurances. Is that, but we're looking at an 8.9% authorization. What is?
8.9.
Because we have to pay Cigna both the employee and the employer piece.
Okay, so our cost of that 8.9 million is 7.8.
Yes.
Thank you.
No
No
worries.
further questions.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Talk us a little bit about the Fitbit program. What
Oh,
kind of
sure.
success and acceptance and so on have you had with that?
It's been, I have to say, it's been a lot of fun. And I really do mean it when I say Julie is our poster child on this, because, I don't know, she posts up pictures, she's walking around the roof of her house cleaning it for some reason, getting extra steps. So we kind of challenge each other. We have a little dashboard. We each have a dashboard, and then we have a community that you can participate in. But you're really competing against yourself more so than another person. So it's finding ways to get your 30 minutes of cardio in or getting your 10,000 steps in. And it's fun, and it's like ka-ching. Every day you can get $3 or $1.50, whatever it is you can do. And we've seen people lose weight. Wasn't me, but we've seen people lose weight. I think be a lot healthier. See blood pressures go down.
And that's across all of the different plans?
It is only in the high deductibles
Okay.
pilot this year.
Okay.
So now we'll be introducing it to the biggest piece of our population.
Okay. All right. So, and do we fund that totally ourselves?
What we do is we provide, Julie, how much money?
We have an $80 subsidy on that.
Yeah.
So like I chose, for myself, I chose a higher level Fitbit. So I put the other $40 into it to get what I wanted, but there's an $80 subsidy which will get you, it's not even the bottom of the line one.
Yeah, I think.
So, I think that's the same one I have. But you have all the choices up to the $400 one that you can use your $80 subsidy for. And when you do get that and you sign up for it within Fitbit itself, you join the PSTA group. Right now, out of the 114 people in the high deductible plan, 72 of them are participating in the Fitbit group. And this was the test year. We have a lot more things we can do with it. We can divvy up the groups into transportation and finance and marketing and have individual challenges. We can have group challenges. We get a lot of data from Fitbit, and that's how we know how to pay out the rewards we do. So we'll still be able to do all of those things with including the base plan in the program with the subsidy. So.
What was interesting to me with the Fitbit is that you can, if you want to, track, your glasses of water, how many ounces of water a day, your sleep, which just explained a lot to me once I started tracking it. So.
All right, so are we going to expand that to other groups in the future?
We are going to expand it next year to our base plan, which has the majority of the people in it. Let me just go back. So that has right now 332 people in it, roughly. So we'll add that to our high deductible plan, and then we'll continue on maybe the next year to add the next plan in.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cox, one more.
This is on the Fitbit also, and there's 70 participating right now, is that correct?
72 are participating right now out of the 114 who are in the high deductible plan.
And what percentage of the 72 hit the 10,000 step goal?
I don't have the number off the top of my head. It's a large percentage. We gave out a lot of money.
I get it all the time.
Yeah, we gave out a lot of money. I do know that there was 7 or 8 people who, because we pay out on a quarterly basis, there was 7 or 8 people who did it for every single, all 90 days out of the 2 quarters that we've done it so far. I was not one of them. But we have people at varying degrees.
My insurance company does give that same, they give $1, not $1.50, for each day you hit over 10,000.
Yeah.
In a gift card. Anyway, thank you. I'll let you-
Commissioner Shulman?
Yeah, I had just another question, I skipped it, regarding the HSA. Do we know what the employee contribution rate is? The number of employees contributing to the plan?
I actually checked that in anticipation, because last meeting, I think off the top of my head, I told you it was about half, and it's a little less than that. We have 48 people currently who are participating by putting money in out of their weekly paycheck. Now, that does not include people who on their own decided to send checks, because the HSA bank account is the employees. We can help with the payroll deduction, but if somebody on their own decided to write a check and
Right.
have it funded, we would not have that information available. But,
Okay.
so it's a little less than half at this point, and it varies from, we have people doing $10 a paycheck up to $500 a paycheck. And of course, we watch those to make sure that they're not exceeding the annual limit for that.
Do we share with the employees the claims cost? You know, our experience as far as claims cost, so they can understand what their claims may look like down the road, and to encourage additional savings?
We have encouraged the additional savings to basically say, if you were in the plan, and you were paying $32.70. Instead, if you go to the high deductible, take that same 32 you were paying, and just put it in there. I mean, I think people sometimes get a little lax about it. So I think it's important, and again, we do know of people who put checks in.
Well, and to that point, it's people don't realize what healthcare will cost in those plans until they experience it, right? So the more we can share, you know, that
Right.
as long as you're when you're healthy and not using it's the time that it's easiest to put money into it. So it's there when you need it.
We've gotten better at our education also. I think the first open enrollment we did introducing the 3 plans, it was all still new to a lot of us. Last year's we did better with the education, and there's a lot to be said for personal experience. There's a whole bunch of us in the high deductible plan who can actually speak to it. So I know I have people all the time that will come up and actually ask, and I will just, besides giving the official benefits line of how it works, I can also say, well, I've done this and I've done that as I've gone through it, because I am going through it and I'm learning as I go with it too. So we're getting better on the education side of it, and for open enrollment this year, we already have legwork done on how we're going to get messaging out and how much better it's going to be this year and what we're going to be focusing on. We hear a lot of questions. We've learned from the questions on what we need to answer better, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval?
I'll support.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously, thank you very much.
Can I have one? I just wanted to thank you. That really is a great.
Yes.
Deal.
That is tremendous. That's less than I would have expected to have seen, just generally speaking. So I appreciate the good work being done by our broker as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, just to that point, the average here in Florida increases 8 to 12%. So 4.4 is really good.
Great, thank you. We're running a little short on time, I don't want to hold the next meeting up. Al, can you talk to us about bus barriers?
Yes,
Maybe, let me introduce this.
Yes.
So, as you know, as you all were at the last PSTA board meeting, and we had a really good, a large number of our employees were at the meeting expressing a need for improved safety in light of the terrible fatality of the bus driver over in Tampa. The board clearly directed us to act quickly, and I just want to introduce Al by saying that it's all parts of the organization have really responded in a fantastic way. Right after the board meeting on Friday, we hosted James Bradford, our Chief Operating Officer.
Right next to you.
Oh, he's here. I didn't see you. Oh my gosh, that's scary. He sat right here during the thing too,
Yeah.
and presented to our union, to a large number of our operators. And then we also invited, they asked, because they had not, they were a little behind, that Hart's drivers came and Hart's management came as well. And James did a great presentation of all the different kinds of barriers and options that exist out there in the world. And we reached an agreement with our union, our employees, on the kind that they wanted to buy. That was just one key, huge element. Debbie and the finance team did a good job of looking through our capital plan and coming up with what I think is a good solution on identifying funds that we can do to purchases. And then Al and his team have done an amazing job of fast tracking this procurement. That we're not completely done yet as of today, so this is why it's listed on your agenda as an informational item. But if you, as the finance committee, would like to make some sort of recommendation, you're certainly free to do that. Al, give them a lid on where we're at.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair and committee members. First off, as a procurement professional, I want to thank Brad and James for allowing me to do my job. They said they want it done swiftly, but they wanted it done correctly and by the numbers, and I believe me and my team, we've done that. After the meeting that Brad spoke about with the union, and they said what type of barrier they wish to do, I elected to go with the procurement method of brand name or equal. And what that does in procurement terms, that allows for competition. Some of our peers have elected to go other directions, but Brad and James, they said, hey, we want it done right. And I did it and used my best judgment to make sure that the procurement was done in accordance with FTA and Florida statutes that would give us flexibility for grant opportunities and other opportunities for funding this later down the road if they should show up here. The solicitation, after that Friday meeting, the solicitation was released on June 12th. We had a pre-bid earlier this week, where I'm pleased to announce that we had approximately seven potential bidders at the pre-bid, either in person or on the phone. Approximately 6 companies have downloaded the IFB and are taking a look at it. Some of those are subcontractors as well as OEMs, suppliers, etc. I'd like to point out that one of the suppliers is even a locally owned manufacturer here in Pinellas County. The bids are due June 21st, which is this Friday at 10 a.m. After that, I will meet with the maintenance staff, and they will determine the technical acceptability of the bids, and the lowest bidder will be awarded the contract contingent on meeting the salient characteristics that were outlined in the bid. Staff anticipates bringing before you a recommendation for a contract at the June 26th board meeting. I would respectfully inform the committee that we are in the cone of silence, so if there are questions that are asked, I might not be able to answer them all. But with that, Mr. Chair, committee, I'll do my best.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I just want to make sure, and I'm sure you've done this, Al, that the numbers that we receive include all the hardware and all the other components that would be necessary to install these. So that, and are we including installation as part of the contract, or are we going to do the installation here?
The short answer is yes. Installation is included in there. Also, we've also included engineering costs because of the different model years and model of the vehicles that we have.
Okay, cool. Okay, Commissioner Bennett?
This is kind of a question that would relate to what happens after the fact. But do we have some way to monitor, or are we going to have some way to monitor the use of the facility. Is there gonna be a way that the driver, the operator of the vehicle cannot use the safety procedures that we are employing?
Yeah, well, that's always a concern. What's gonna have to happen is a lot of training, a lot of education. Our union's already expressed they wanna get together with us, because they were really the champions of this and really forcing us to take a look. So they are also equally interested in how we prepare to go forward to administer. Obviously, when you don't follow rules and regulations and policy procedures, this could lead to corrective action for the operators. And certainly, the union doesn't want to create an additional situation where bus operators are being written up for improper use. So depending, we don't know exactly what we're going to get after we're able to go in and go out and look at all the features. Yes, sir, we're going to have to determine a way that we all agree on that this particular piece of hardware, this barrier needs to be used in this manner only. And what are the flexibilities? When you get out, when do you know, if it opens up, you know, how long can you leave it open? All those different things. So that will be determined before we deploy them. Absolutely. That was a good question.
Yeah.
So I know that our employees were very enthusiastic about this, and,
Yes, sir.
and they came to us and wanted us to do this, and we're going to do it. But I happen to have the opportunity over the past couple of weeks to ride in the bus system in Washington, D.C. None of the operators used it. Every door was taped shut. Open, I mean, taped open. And I was in Detroit also, and maybe 3 bus rides. 2 of the 3 had their doors taped open. So we had to work on trying to make sure this doesn't happen.
Yes, sir.
And
And
I want
I
to spend all this money and then have an operator decide it's too hot, and so I'm going to keep my door open.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's where policy is going to really have to take precedent. You know, same thing when we put in security cameras originally, and you find, you know, maybe certain operators trying to cover up the camera, the one that's on them, and, you know, we added in our contract things that guard against that. So, you know, a lot of the other agencies administer themselves differently, but I'm full agreement with you. If we're going to put in this investment and move forward, then they need to be used for their intended purpose. So that's where I'm going to really have to sit down with the union and say, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable.
Okay. Oh, Commissioner Schulman.
So I struggle with this, and I was at the board meeting. I don't know if I would characterize it as the board saying that they were in favor of moving forward. I recall Chair Long, when the drivers asked us to put it to motion at that moment, saying, we have a process. We need to go through the process. We need to investigate these alternatives. We need to look at what it's going to cost. We need to look at where we're going to get the money. And it seems like even though we said we have a process, we are just going around that whole, going around it to try to expedite something. That is a reaction that the driver survey a year ago didn't include bus barriers, at least as far as I was shared as being a top concern. And I realize that we've had a recent random act of violence, but I believe we need to be taking the time to really investigate what we're doing and how we're deploying things, making sure that we do have the drivers on board for using it, making sure that drivers don't put themselves into positions when they're not operating the bus, but are near the bus so that they're still remaining safe. I feel like we're moving a little fast on something that was it was a random act of violence. It wasn't a targeted attack, and coupled with that, we also have the it was shared that, so other agencies are now looking at these petitions, and so there's going to be a manufacturing production delay, right, in getting these things. It's not like there were millions of them sitting around in a warehouse somewhere. Is that?
Upon board approval in a contract, the manufacturer, the contractor rather, will submit to the project manager a production schedule or a schedule. In the solicitation, it does outline, I believe, 60 weeks that the entire fleet be completely outfitted, and they have to be in compliance with that.
Okay, so that's for the 210.
Yes, sir.
Which doesn't include any of the Jolly Trolley correct, or?
I'm looking, I'll defer to Henry, I'm not sure what's all included in the 210.
If that doesn't include the other costs.
Okay. So there is potentially time to, these aren't gonna be, well, if we don't get them now, they're not here, we're gonna miss our chance to get them in the next 3 weeks. So
we're into Commissioner Gerard's time, so please keep it short.
she defers. She deferred.
Well, I understand your point, and one thing that came out of that last meeting that was a little surprising, and maybe it's that I haven't paid attention to it, but that there are a lot of other encounters that our bus drivers have while they're out there on the roads, that it would be nice to have some kind of report that does provide that. I mean, I'm sure they report that to you.
Yes, sir.
That they were something thrown at them, or they were spit at, or they were, I think those encounters, it's good for us to understand.
Correct.
What level, I mean, again, random act was the shooting, or the killing, but it could be a whole lot of other things that leads to something. So I'd like to have, if we can get some of that
Oh,
information together for next Wednesday's discussion about this, it would be helpful.
Absolutely. And if I may, Commissioners, the one thing we're seeing is, you look at the situation that happened, and one death might as well be 1 million deaths, and if it happens again, most likely will in one way, shape, or form, we're gonna be right back here tenfold, and the operator's gonna have everybody in full force. I think what we're seeing, and I was able to reach out to some of the other transit agencies, is this is something that a lot of agencies are moving toward. Obviously, a fatal assault we don't see often. You see one, that's way too many, but the verbal disputes are sky highs, skyrocketed. The number of times that folks will make an attempt to throw or well, I should just say spit. I was trying to use a word that I wasn't prepared to say. But the point of the matter is we're seeing way too many of these things. You bring up a lot of excellent points, and I was able to see some of the inquiries you made with the group in the track committee yesterday. The one thing, me talking to a lot of customers and drivers, is the safety is number one. It's their blind spot. It's not knowing at night. If there's one person on the bus and standing right here, what do I do? These things aren't bulletproof. They're not going to get you from the front windshield or from the side, but they can certainly buy you time to react. So that's what we're looking at. The surveys we did, and when we had the demo out there, a lot of the operators said, I really don't mind this on here, but I don't know if we need it or not. After the assault, you had 99% of them saying we absolutely need this. If we're stopping something that may happen once more in the next 30 years, then that's enough for us. I reached out to agencies in Minneapolis Transit who've made the decision to go forward. Jacksonville is making the decision to go forward. We're just seeing a trend of rising encounters that's alarming. A lot of the customers will either say, if I'm new and I get on here, do I feel safe by seeing this barrier? And a lot of others will tell you, I feel safe being on this bus knowing that some would-be assailant can't reach the driver and then make the bus pull off the road. I know I feel safe when I board the airplane and I see that someone can't get into the cockpit area and wrestle the plane away. There's a lot of questions, and you bring up a lot of good ones, and I think for the last 10 years, a lot of folks have been on both sides of the debate, but I think with the way we're seeing things escalate currently, and even worldwide, where they build buses in a way that the driver is automatically separated from the passengers in the build design, this is just the way things are going, unfortunately. And if we're not here right now, we're going to be right back here a year later or 2 years later, the next time somebody gets a direct punch.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
We're moving pretty fast on this, considering this is my second meeting with the PSTA. And I don't know if you can answer this question. Is Heart Transportation System, or the Union for Heart, are they moving as fast as we are?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Another question. You said these aren't bulletproof. These partitions that were.
To my knowledge, many of them are not. I don't know what the.
And what was explained at the union meeting was they're tempered glass. They're exactly like it was described as the same glass as the windshield on a car or bus.
Okay.
So it won't shatter, but it's not bulletproof.
So if there's a shooting the next time, are we then upgrading, so are we then upgrading to the next partition that is a reaction to something that's occurred? And then,
Right.
I want to make sure that we're looking at this and getting the
Understood.
appropriate
Yeah.
barriers that are going to, we're not going to solve everything.
No,
So we
absolutely.
can't build a
Spending
steel
good
barrier.
dollar. We want to spend the good dollar.
And I want to make sure that our drivers feel protected. I want to make sure our riders feel that the drivers are protected, that they're also safe. I mean, one of the items that was brought up at the track meeting was, can the driver intercede if there's something going on with the passengers in the back, or do they wind up being just shut off and passengers are left to deal with things on their own? So there's a whole bunch of things to think about.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we are.
Absolutely, and I can answer some of those questions. Obviously, some of them are, hypothetical worst-case scenarios that,
Well, so was the stabbing until it occurred.
Oh, absolutely, but this was also a discussion where our union was pushing us to get these 100% of the fleet before that unfortunate incident. The one thing I can tell you, and this is to go back, it's going to have to be a lot of training, it's going to have to be a lot of partnership, a lot of phone calls and emails to what are other agencies doing. You bring up an excellent point. I think part of our training, and I see Theo back there, will include, you absolutely should supersede or intercede if there's an event going on to help customers. And we preach that to folks. De-escalation training still has to be number one. Just because you're behind the barrier doesn't mean you get to act and respond to customers in any type of way and be ruder or give out less customer service just because you feel like you're completely protected behind this barrier. So, that's just one component. But education, we're going to have to also teach our customers and promote to them how they're still safe in our vehicles. There's going to have to be a lot of many components to this thing, and I'm very open to you all's ideas and thoughts on this because I'm going to incorporate absolutely everything into this. There's a lot to do moving ahead.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate. I mean, you bring up excellent comments, and I'm in agreement.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting, and I think for what we're talking about, I know it's too late for this, where we are today, as far as the bids coming in on Friday, but, I just assumed that this was bulletproof, so it isn't. And what cost difference are we talking about with that?
I just want to make a clarification. In the solicitation that's out on the street, it could be better than what we've asked for. So we haven't received bids, and I don't want to jump the gun and say that anything is or isn't, since we haven't received anything yet.
And finally, Debbie, I hope that you bring us at least a couple of ways that we're going to pay for this. I know you're not, I didn't notice a lot of excitement about the one I proposed, which was the change in the bus purchase for this coming year.
Actually, we are doing that.
Oh, you are actually as an alternative? Oh, good for you.
We're doing that
Okay,
in
so I'd like to hear
April.
some of those alternatives that you have in mind to pay for this next Wednesday. Not now,
Okay.
not now.
All right.
Thank you.
We're 10 minutes over into Commissioner Gerard's time, so I'm going to ask that the monthly financial statement and the ridership performance report be like a couple of sentences, just to get us, so we
Better.
get it.
Better every day.
Not too much
There you go. We're
time here.
done.
Would be unfair to
Get better.
the committee.
It's April's financials, it's June, and it was good.
Ridership was great.
How was
Ridership
that?
was up. Ridership was up. Yeah, it was up.
Ridership was up.
And we're ahead of schedule on finance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so, seriously, that's all we have, okay? Yeah. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Meeting adjourned. And again, I apologize to Commissioner Gerard.
We had a lot of activity.
Yeah.
Okay, Rick.
We're leaving on the plane.
Yeah, you gotta stay for the next meeting.
Yeah, I was
That's good. Okay.
All right, see you guys.
Okay, my first meeting, first one.
Hey, sir. Hey.
No, and I'm like, I.
Good to meet you. You as well.
Great job.